Welcome, Divine Goddess, for another episode on Authentically Healed, Women's Trauma Healing Podcast. I am Chloe, your host, your favorite holistic therapist. And today's topic is going to be about how your colonial mindset prevents you from actually healing and deeply healing. So, this topic might be a little controversial, but my belief personally is that as a society, we all have a colonial mindset because of how, as a society, we evolved, because of how our current society, since industrialization and slavery, has been set up. We all have been conditioned in the colonial mindset. This is why our society is set up the way it is today. This is why we are part of a system that is toxic, that is a killing machine, that profits, that puts, money and power over human lives, and that is built on the exploitation of others. More specifically, on a ideology, white supremacist ideology, which has created a inequality based on race, based on our skin color. It's a society that's been built on the exploitation of Africa, of nearly the entire continent, and has been built also on the the suppression of indigenous culture, indigenous tribe and societies. So this society is built on those things, in my opinion. And this system is fed by us as well, consciously or unconsciously. Some people will be, have the white supremacist mindset and belief system and completely, have a very deep disconnect, right, from their humanity. And some people who are, good people in general still have a colonial mindset. I am growing out of myself, still out of this colonial mindset. And it doesn't, and you can literally be part of a minority um, and still have a colonial mindset. Because now the colonial mindset has, paradoxically today, the colonial mindset has no race, color, is has no origin, has no, like, anyone can have a colonial mindset. And most of us today have a colonial mindset that we're just not aware of, and has been we have been conditioned into this mindset in with, like, unconsciously, due to our society, due to our upbringing, and because, well, past generations have been also on some level conditioned into this, and then also due to our environment and how we had to adapt to the society to survive, obviously, and to live in it, because obviously as human beings we adapt to survive. And when your survival depends on making money, depends on being part of this society, being part of a collective system where on some level you're used to being exploited, or based on injustice and exploitation of others, you still in the present moment have to survive. And so that's what we pass on to our children. Even if we don't believe in the system, we still work in the system, we're still part of the system. We haven't gone back to our ancestral wisdom. We haven't yet connected fully with our ancestors. We haven't yet decolonized ourselves. We are still dependent on this system on some level. It's not like we're, some people are starting to do that, but it's not like majority of people have built communities out of the system. The system makes it obviously very hard for us. the same way the system has made it very hard for indigenous people who were on the lands before we arrived to now keep practicing they did everything to deprive them from their traditions and rituals and culture. They deeply traumatized and unalived as well those communities. So even those communities who are trying to be heard and advocate for Mother Earth are still suppressed, are still um you know have their lives in danger when they speak up, are still threatened by the society, by the people in power, by the community that supports the people in power. And so even for those who still have the wisdom, it is extremely hard to actually function in this society. And even indigenous descendants, unfortunately, have some level of trauma due to colonization and some level of limitation due to the fact that they needed to survive in the colonization system, the colonial system. And this can create some level of colonialist mindset in our minds that we might not be aware of, but it's ultimately due to trauma, ultimately due to our conditioning, ultimately due to a system we're in. And it's not something that we choose to think, to believe. It's something that is deeply rooted in our subconscious. And so on my personal journey, I discovered in which ways the colonial mindset that I was raised into really affected me as a human being, as you know, affected like my healing as well, how I approach healing. I will dive a little bit deeper into that because also healing and spirituality has been also hijacked by the colonial mindset as well. And so the colonial mindset is really basically, you know, constantly going into all sphere and trying, it's like a virus, a poison that is everywhere basically and will, turn things to benefit itself. And um and so it can literally, be everywhere. And I noticed how this mindset, at on my journey at one point really held me back from actually healing, because a large portion also of our healing is like ego death to the system, like letting go of the system. And I think as much as we hate the system, the reason why it's not changing, in my opinion, or the reason that it's getting worse on some level, or the reason that and I'm not saying that there's not positive change, but the reason that it's kind of stagnant and it's not really going quickly, like the change, and sometimes might get worse or not changing, is because as much as we hate the system, we're still in a space where we haven't let go of the system. It's like a toxic relationship, in my opinion. The colonial mindset, the relationship we have with the system, for most of us, is a toxic relationship, meaning we're codependent to it. We have some level of attachment to it. We have some level of love for it, or affection. Not really love, but affection and attachment. And we've grown, we have grown in the system, meaning we have memories, that emotional memories, bonding with family, bonding with friends, that are rooted in the system, that are associated with the system. There's a lot of emotional attachment to the system, no matter how badly we want to change it, or how much we hate it, how much we complain about it. Complaining is one thing, not agreeing is one thing, but then action is different. Actually taking action. You can disagree with something and still take a very long time to actually take action to change it. You know, it's just human behavior, because between addressing something that we don't want in our lives, disagreeing with something, feeling like not agreeing with something or being completely, not okay with something, there's a gap between that realization and then actually taking action towards changing it. And that gap requires letting go, that we let go of what attaches us to that thing or this system on the in this context. So I realized that so that's why, in my opinion, we all have a colonial mindset that we have to dismantle before we can even change the society, because on some level we're still in this toxic relationship with the system. Like, we're not agreeing with the government, we're not agreeing with the elites and what they're doing, the crazy shit that they're doing. We're not agreeing with anything that they're doing. We see that they actually don't care, and that's it's just the hunger for power. It's just greed, the hunger for power. It's just this antisocial system. Like, it's anti-humanity, anti-social. It's against humanity. It's built against humanity. It can only thrive and function um, with the absence of humanity. Um, so as much as we hate it, we're still dependent on it. And I think acknowledging that we have some level of oppressor within us, that we have some level of abuser within us, some level of colonialism, empire mentality within us, is one step, in my opinion, to moving forward on actually changing ourselves and changing the world. Because without the inner acknowledgement and the inner healing and actually letting go of the system inside of us, we're never going to be able to let go and actually change the system outside of ourselves. Because first and foremost, we are the system. We are the system. So as long as we just complain and we don't acknowledge that, we're just going to feed the system. So the second thing I wanted to talk about is, on my journey, as I just mentioned, I realized that this was also one of a big step on my healing journey that I had to move towards. And that actually this colonial mindset was like preventing me from actually healing and put me in a space where I felt powerless without realizing, but I felt powerless on some level. And so on my journey, I started taking those steps, right? And so those, I'm going to talk about the different areas that we're meant to explore in order, like you should explore if you want to heal your colonial mindset, right? Also, I'm going to be talking about like what it looks like really, like concretely. So one of the things that, in terms of healing and spirituality, there are different ways that the colonial mindset has poisoned as well healing and ancestral healing, that our ancestors, had a hold on, understood deeply, and has like a lot of cultural appropriation, a lot of things that this empire has stolen from us, from our ancestors, is also spirituality and healing. And it has turned it into something that is still extremely privileged, extremely like lacking humanity and empathy and compassion, basically, and deprived this connection with healing and spirituality from humanity. And successfully don't know how, like, that's one of the things I can give to colonialism, is that it can literally turn anything that is beautiful into something without humanity. How can spirituality be without humanity? Colonialism in it. How can healing be without humanity? colonialism in it. So colonialism, the colonial mindset in spirituality and healing looks like, well, stop playing the victim, self-development, don't do a pity party, don't, you're weak if you have mental health issues. It looks like I don't want to get involved in too low vibration. I need to stay high. I need to be the light for others. I need to not avoidance of what's going on in the world, avoidance of triggers, avoidance of our own shadows. And this a mentality of this spirituality where there's no connection with Mother Earth. There's like, it's not because you live like if you it's not because you have nature around you that you know how to dialogue with nature. It's not because you live in an eco-friendly farm that actually how to communicate with nature, how to heal yourself, that you are actually connected to your ancestors. It's not because you walk barefoot on the grass that you're actually connected to Mother Earth again. Yes, physically, on a physical level, you receive some level of her medicine, but you're still in a space where you're taking from her and you're just only like you're not giving in return. Basically, it's not a dialogue, it's just a one way. It's again exploitation. Even if it's like entitlement. Well, I need to be in nature because I'm entitled to receive her medicine. But what do you really do for nature? What do you really do for Mother Earth? What do you really do for humanity? What do you really do for others? What do you really do for the world? Right? So there's a difference between being in nature and actually having a connection and a dialogue with nature. Two different things. So that's what it looks like colonialism that has poisoned as well spirituality and things that come from our ancestors, from indigenous people that were erased by that same colonialism, and has turned it into a way to be again avoidant of others and appropriate and cultural appropriation and appropriation from indigenous cultures and communities and societies, literally stealing things and turning it to its advantage. So um so one of the things that I realized as well on my journey at one point is that colonial mindset um made me become avoidant of humanity. It made me become, and that is not something that we necessarily do consciously. Sometimes it happens really unconsciously, but it's this feeling entitled, of feeling comfortable, of inner peace. And yes, as a human being, our birthright is peace, is happiness, is you know, harmony, love, like this is every human being's right. Okay. But I think that's where the colonial mindset comes in. And I realized this in myself. We cannot be at peace and comfortable as long as our brothers and sisters on this earth, as long as other human beings on this earth are suffering. We cannot be at peace, and we cannot claim that peace and comfort over their suffering. Like, we cannot deny their suffering just for our own peace because we feel that we're deserving of that. That's where we get it twisted. We're not at peace today, and I think that's the truth that a lot of people, a lot of us, and I myself before, struggle to, had to accept, and a lot of people struggle to accept this today, is that we are not at peace, we're not well, and the world is not well. And yes, there is hope. There is, there's a vision, there's a collective vision for those who feel, they came here to change the world or be part and partake in this change. But we have to be able to hold space for people suffering. And that is something that I really had to realize, because who am I to say I deserve peace of mind whilst others are suffering horrendous things because of the system we're in and that I contribute to. How can I ask? How can I feel entitled that way when others don't have that? And it's not because of a lack of willpower. And that's the thing also that the colonial mindset makes us think, oh, people in certain countries in Africa, oh, in Congo, in Sudan, or in Palestine, or, in Bangladesh or other countries where they're going through horrendous things, Afghanistan, women not being able to sing, being completely shut down by men there. The colonial mindset wants us to believe, well, it's been that way all the time. We cannot do much about it. Um, and making us think like, oh, they're just in a victimhood mentality, and I'm just, I'm here. I'm in a better life because I have the willpower for. That's what the colonial mindset wants us to think, that people who are suffering, they don't want to get out of their suffering. That people who are suffering, who don't have also like, we have the same issues with homeless people. Oh, they just don't have the willpower. They're just weak. If they wanted, you can do anything. You can make everything possible in your life. When actually we're just basically lucky to be born in certain parts of the world because our system thrives on exploitation of those people, and everything is set up for those people so that they cannot escape, they cannot have a better life, they cannot do anything. And yes, we are powerful manifester, sure, but still, as much as we are powerful manifestors, there is circumstances that yes, we can change, but takes a long time to change. And if you were in that position, you'll understand that they want change. They might be powerful manifestors too. They might believe in miracles, right? But it just takes more time to manifest the outcome because there's a lot of things going on that makes it very hard because the system is against that. It's a privileged mindset. It's when we are able to say that we're powerful manifestors, when we're able to say that anything, is possible, or that, the fact that we can be manifestors is because we're in a privileged position. When you are in a genocidal situation where there's war, to be able to manifest, right? To be able to create the life we desire, we need at least enough rest. We need the body to be the vessel. We need to have the basic needs covered to be able to relax and actually manifest, because it takes relaxation. When you are in war, everything is set up for you to be in survival mode. There's no way you can manifest anything. And it's not a lack of willpower. It's just because we are privileged to be able to relax. We are privileged to be able to sleep. That's the only difference. It's not because you have more willpower. And that's something I really had to understand. Not that I thought, well, it's their fault, but just the fact that I used to feel, and it's hard to admit, but I used to feel like, well, I cannot do much about that. People in my family kept telling me those things. So I believed that obviously when I grew up, although I still felt like as a child, like that's not fair, it shouldn't happen, but I couldn't put words, and people and adults kept telling me, well, that's how it is. It's just how it is. And if you want to live in your comfortable life, you have to accept that people are going to suffer. Basically, we have to accept that people are going to suffer for our comforts, which makes no sense, obviously, right? And I had to understand that their suffering is not because they are lack willpower, education, or anything. It's literally because the system is set up like that. The same way, and you can see that in the US. I think the US is a big example of how people are a slave to exhaustions and how the system has made them so exhausted that they cannot even think for themselves. Versus, I think in Europe, it's a little lighter, but literally everywhere in Western countries, it's the same way because we're being exploited, but at a less extreme level, and we're not being unalived. We're not like we're dehumanized, but at a certain level that gives us privilege, right? Compared to people who are completely deprived of their human rights. So, but it's the same way we are put into a system where we are constantly exhausted. You just see it when you work, when you take a job and you become part of the system. Everything is set up for you to be exhausted, and being exhausted is the norm. So everyone makes you believe that no, you're not exhausted. It's just work and it's normal to be tired from time to time. But when you analyze and you go deeper into the schedule, into how hierarchy works, how the companies work, corporate works, you realize that everyone is running on some level of exhaustion and that it's a very toxic environment. And so neurodivergent will feel this more because they're going to be exhausted. They're going to be the ones who burn out because they're the ones who are tapped in. And so they're going to feel this at a more intense level. And they are gonna, they're gonna be the one who will not be able to fully go, like to continue working without, like, their body is set up in a way that just cannot, they reject it, they cannot do it, which is good because it's self-preservation. But it's literally exploitation. Is literally setting us up to make sure we don't have time to think, we don't have time to rest, we don't have time to manifest, we don't have time to be tapped in. We don't have time. But when we're neurodivergent, the blessing is that we can only live a life where we're tapped in. We can only live a life that is aligned to that. And people will make you feel that you're not normal because the norm is to accept exhaustion and accept to be exploited and accept toxicity at work, accept so many different types of abuse, emotional abuse. That is supposed to be the norm. It's supposed to be tough love. It's supposed to be the way that a manager treats their employees, or a company treats their employees. Like, it's supposed to be the norm when it's literally modern slavery, right? And again, we're in a privileged position. So the colonial mindset wants us to believe that, well, those who suffer, it's because they lack education. It's poor countries, like our Western mass media love to portray them, completely like denying they have like literal city, literal education, like resources, like, and those countries, like for instance, some countries in Africa will have a lot of poverty, not because they don't have education or don't have the resources. It's literally because Western country steals their resources, basically. And if they don't want to give their resources up for nothing, well, then Western countries will create war and until they get what they want, basically. So and and so when we are in this mindset, basically, well, we're going to avoid, and that's what I used to do, avoiding what's going on in the world, avoiding my feelings about it. If something would trigger me, I would just stop looking at it. I would just be like, okay, let's just not look at that. Let's just focus on my life. But again, acknowledging others' suffering, acknowledging what is going on in the world, acknowledging our anger, acknowledging our grief, acknowledging the anxiety that comes up, the hopelessness that comes up, the trauma that comes up. We're meant to hold space for others suffering in the world. We're meant to look at it. We're meant to face it. We're meant to hold space for it. And only and not doing that and constantly going from, okay, this shit is happening, well, let me just avoid it and remain in high vibration and hope and just hope for the best and just be like, I'll be there and I will just not look at it. You have to look at it. We have to look at it. The only way to get out of the colonial mindset is to actually face the fucking shit that's happening in the world and stop denying it and stop living in our fantasy, in our ideal world, in our new earth world, and not and living completely disconnected from reality and what's going on. And that means when you're disconnected from what's going on in the world, you're disconnected from yourself. That's the thing also. By denying people suffering, not acknowledging it, well, you're not acknowledging your own shadows because they're only the reflection of your own trauma. They're only the reflection of your own shadows. We need to acknowledge them to heal our shadows. We need to acknowledge suffering of others. Like, and we have to stop convincing ourselves that and get finding excuses for things like, okay, but this is how it's always been. Let's question it also, like, why is it that it's always been like that? Has it really always been like that, right? Has it, you know, is this really the natural way of things? Because colonialism has also, like, when it comes to women's power, one of the theme with colonialism and imperialism is that it's against like nature's way, against mother nature, and that goes with woman's power because women have the power to bring life. They used to be pillars in communities. They used to be, respected amongst their communities and their societies. Now women are reduced to slave and to maids in home and to serving men. When there was a time when women had their word about their body, were leaders, had a important position in a society. It's like when people talk about abortions laws and saying it's not the natural way, you're killing your baby. Our ancestors had practices and rituals and understood that as women, we have the power to give life. And that means we have also a responsibility. And we have a responsibility to decide if this soul should come into this earth. We have the responsibility with our intuition because we have this deep connection with Mother Earth, with Source, and we have this intuition when we're in a position of becoming a porter or a mother. We know if this soul should come, if we're in a position, a good position for this soul to come. We know if it's meant to be. And it is okay to interrupt a pregnancy and to let that soul remain on the other side because it's part of, we have this power, but we also have a responsibility of bringing new human beings into the world and knowing um if we should do it or not. We have the we're supposed to choose, we're supposed to decide, we're supposed to know what to do, and our ancestors knew how to do that. And so when you have people like white supremacists and conservative politicians or people who talk about how it's not natural, how we're killing, how we're interrupting life, it's depriving women from their power, from it's wanting to deny women's power and responsibility and ability to think through things and trusting their intuition. What white supremacists and colonialism wants to do is deprive women from their power and also like deprive women from being trusted, from being in a position where people trust them, and making them look like, oh, they're crazy, they're emotional. Look at them. You cannot trust a woman, right? Like, that's been the propaganda since the beginning of this society, of this industrial society. Women were women were put in asylum because they had emotions. Women were deprived of their dignity, and they were repressed basically, and we've been deprived from our power, and patriarchy has tried, and colonialism has tried to take away our power. Everything is linked. So, so again, understanding that in spirituality, there's a colonial mindset. Okay. I had to heal it. I had to face it. I had to understand it. And I had to face it. I had to understand that myself. When I started to acknowledge the suffering of the world, of what's going on in the world, and feeling the uncomfortable emotions that came through because of what I was seeing and what I was witnessing, it's the least we can do, because by holding space, when we deny people suffering, when we deny, and that goes for everything, people who suffer in the world, people who go through a genocide, people who lost their homes, people who are in a war zone, people who are, homeless, people who have mental health issues, and understanding that the system, if we were in a healthy communities, if we were not in the system we're in, first of all, a lot of wars would not be, like, war would not be happening. All of the things that are happening today would not be happening. And people with mental health issues or difficulty or isolation wouldn't end up in the streets. Like, there's so much that is out of is so much chaos is created due to this society that literally has some level of power over us, and that's something we have to acknowledge. So much is set up to make it harder, so much, and not just on the physical plane but on the spiritual plane as well, because it's not just a physical, like, it's not a war against the system, it's a war against literal demons and literal, it's a warfare in spiritual warfare. So it's not just on the physical plane. So there's so much that comes into play, that is the system, like the system exists physically but also spiritually. And so there's so much going on that makes it's a lot of resistance, it's a lot of obstacle, it's a lot of things that makes it extremely hard and creates a lot of resistance for us to be able to, for a lot of people to be able to overcome their situation. And it's not a lack of willpower. And so when we deny people suffering, when we deny what's going on, when we just put it on the side and say, well, that's over there, the country has always been at war, or this has always been happening, even feeling deep down inside, well, they're used to it, nobody is used to war. No child gets used to being scared for their lives. No child. No child. So when we deny that, and we stay in a denial, and we avoid, that avoidance feeds the colonial system. That energy that you keep inside of you, that you don't exercise, that you don't get out, that those shadows continue feeding the shadows of the system. When you acknowledge people suffering, even if it makes you uncomfortable, even if you end up crying, even if you end up not being able to sleep, you're deconditioning yourself from it. You're letting go of you're letting go of the system. The system also starts losing power over you when you start acknowledging people suffering, what people are going through. And it takes courage. It literally takes courage. I'm not saying it's easy. No, it's not. It's painful. It takes courage. It takes courage to acknowledge what's going on. It takes courage to face your fear. It takes courage to face your anxiety. It takes courage to feel like, to go through this hopelessness phase. It takes courage to feel like everything is crumbling down, because we need to go through that fire. We need to go through that fire, because what is crumbling down is not literally, the world is not crumbling down. But our inner patriarchy, inner colonialism is crumbling down. That's what is crumbling down. When we're witnessing people suffering, that's what's crumbling down. And we feel hopeless, we feel scared, we feel because we're healing codependency with a toxic system. We feel like, oh, how am I gonna survive? We face our hopelessness and our powerlessness, feeling like, and all the things that this system try to make us forget how to survive, how to live in harmony with nature. It seems so foreign, so it's scary when we let go of the system. It's scary because we think, well, how can I catch myself with what? Like I have forgotten everything. But we have to be in this space to remember as well. We have to be in this space of literally feeling we're dying, literally feeling the world is crumbling, so that can regain, we can let go of the limitation and what prevents us from remembering our resources, remembering what we're capable of, remembering the power of our body, remembering all the wisdom that we used to have. We need to let it go. We need to let go of the system. It's the only, we need to acknowledge people suffering. It's the only way to let go of the system. And I know for me, on my journey at one point, I was on this healing journey, but at one point, you know, it becomes stagnant because when you avoid your shadows, everything is just a reflection of your shadows that you need to face. When you avoid your shadows, you remain in your comfort zone. You remain, yes, it feels good. You feel good, right? Your mental health is well, right? Obviously, because you still are part of the system. You keep your comfort zone. You're comfortable. You're at peace. You're comfortable. It's easy to be at peace when we're not healing, when we're avoiding everything. It's easy to be at peace and comfortable. It's very easy. But when we face things, and sometimes it's gonna be in our own lives, that's when you realize, also in your own life, when shit happens as well, you realize, okay, you start questioning everything, right? We have it. So, but when you acknowledge people suffering, it's the same. You start questioning, it helps you decondition yourself because you can be the most empathetic and compassionate person in the world. You can still have a colonial mindset if you're still avoiding what's going on in the world and actually facing the truth of what's going on, facing the conspiracy theory, which is not this, in my opinion, like, yeah, it's this system is a big conspiracy. It's obviously when you're here to manipulate and to gain from a situation and exploiting other human beings, well, obviously, like everything is going to be calculated. It's like it's a sociopathic mindset. So everything has is literally ties back to people who are just evil, like who are just sociopathic and who make choices to serve them in their little circle. And for some reason, I think one of the biggest thing with our colonialist mindset is that we still believe deep down, like in a toxic relationship, oh, the government is going to change. Deep down they want some, we still believe that deep down they care. It's like when you're in an abusive relationship with someone, deep down you still wish deep down before you can really leave that they do care, right? They must be human, they must be like me, they must care, they're not sociopathic, they must care. There's no such thing as someone who has a human being without feelings. There is such thing as a human being without feelings. There is such thing as people who are on the antisocial spectrum that have no empathy, who literally don't care. And I think understanding that we're dealing with a sociopathic system based, like antisocial system, once we face that, it's very uncomfortable. It's scary. It's like realizing you're in a toxic relationship and this person is never going to change. And this person is going to get worse, that this person is unstable. You don't know what's going to happen next, but something is going to fucking happen. You don't know what's their agenda because you're not a sociopath yourself. So you don't know what's next. You've not been there enough to understand what's been the plan all along. Like, so you literally don't know what's happening. And at the same time, it's a very chaotic system because obviously, like, what a sociopath, if you take someone who has antisocial personality disorder, what a sociopath who's not aware of its, of its mental health does is it goes after like the rush, the adrenaline, it goes after power, it goes after money. And it's never enough because what someone who's sociopathic seeks is the deep down God and the feeling of aliveness, but because they don't know how to connect, they feel like they cannot connect. They will seek outside of themselves and feed themselves. And also, like, it's a personality disorder, so it's something that is very hard to, there's our urges that are very hard to control. So when you think of the system as a sociopathic system, of an antisocial system, it's literally conspiracy is just obvious, right? It's everything is a conspiracy. Everything is calculated, basically. And I think for a lot of us, because we still have the colonial mindset, we think, oh, it must not be calculated to that point, like this, like, you right. But yeah, it's calculated. It's always been calculated. It's always been chaotic as well sometimes. Like, you can be calculated and make mistakes, and human mistakes. You can be calculated and it never really goes exactly according to plan, right? But it's always calculated in a sense. So understanding that, for me, understanding this colonial mindset that I had really helped me break free from feeding, starting to break free, because I'm still on the journey, but starting to break free from feeding the system, like feeding the system and doing what everybody is doing, especially as someone who's spiritual in the spiritual community. A lot of people are avoidant. A lot of people are just not addressing their shadows. They think they need to hold the light. This saying of holding the light for others is just colonial mindset. As hard as it can be to acknowledge it, again, I was there, and the colonial mindset is everywhere, no matter what minority you're part of, or if you're privileged, whatever. And also, I mean, if we're in a Western country, we're privileged on some level. But literally, when we are not acknowledging what's going on, and we want to be this light for everyone, like, that is the easy way out. That's colonialism. That's spirituality. That's colonialist spirituality. Let me be the light. Let me be, for some reason I'm stronger than others. No, we were just born in a privileged way. That's all. Like, we've been privileged. If we were born in those countries that are deeply, deeply exploited by white supremacists, because they're fucking racist, basically, and they fucking are triggered and feel insecure about countries in Africa and other countries who are extremely rich in resources, and they want to steal from them, basically, because they feel they need to take from everyone, basically. If we were born in certain countries who are in war there, or even, in other parts of the world, we would be literally in the same situation than those people. We would be literally suffering as much as they are. You can be the strongest person, like, in the wrong circumstances, everyone suffers. You will not be able to manifest your way out of the situation, because you will be deprived of your basic human rights. You will not have enough food, you will not have enough sleep, you'll be in fight or flight mode. You would just be praying for your life, hoping you're not gonna die. You would literally be hopeless, like those people, and do the best you can to have a GoFundMe, reach out to people for them to help you financially to evacuate. You'll be in survival mode. It's like when you ask someone, like, and then what? Ask them to meditate, to visualize. They don't have the fucking time, the fucking nervous system to visualize. If you are able to visualize today, and make plan for the future, you're able to relax and rest, you're privileged. That's why you're able to do that. And so the least we can do, and not just the least, but it's just as human beings, if we want to heal, we have to be humble enough to actually look at the suffering of others and understand that those are our shadows. We need to acknowledge the suffering. Their suffering is our suffering, and we have to acknowledge it. We have to look at it. No matter how painful it is, we have to acknowledge it. I'm not saying that you need to feed yourself with only horrible images. Literally, I created an account called CTT Humanity that you can follow on Instagram, where I only share, I repost, Palestinian, Congolese, Sudanese people's post, and also like medias and local medias, so we have information. But I literally don't post like too shocking videos and photos, because I'm not here. You can literally, what I'm trying to say is, you can literally understand and look at what is going on in the world without looking at the horrors constantly, and looking at the horrible things that's going on and just feeding yourself of it. But what you can do, though, is at least acknowledge what's going on, and um educate yourself, watch the local news, like go get the information and understand what's going on, and facing the fact that, well, you're part of the system, understanding that, it's like people who think, well, I need to boycott basically everything, and if we have to stop doing this or that, then we cannot live anymore. Well, yeah, you like, if you want to change the system, you cannot live in the system anymore. Yes, of course everything is wrong in the system, but we have to acknowledge it. Still, we have to acknowledge it and take some level of action to support that, to support people who are suffering, and to be able to just face it and face what's going on, understanding the different things that have happened. When you see the Palestinian genocide and what's going on, knowing who is Hind, knowing what happened to that 6 years old, following what happened, and seeing that this is like someone of your family, seeing all the people who've died, looking at the list of the how many people have died, children died, how many people were murdered and unalived, and feeling your uncomfortable emotions, because yes, like the amount of dead in Sudan, all the women in Sudan that committed mass suicide to avoid being raped and unalived by the military there. Read their names. Those are human beings. Those are souls that you've maybe known in a past life. Those are people you are even not that you're connected to, will always be connected to. We have to read those names. We have to go through the list and read the name, go through the list and read the name, educate yourself, go after the news and the local news, and educate yourself. Like, I'm not saying that we have to watch horror movies over and over again, horror what all like see all the horrible pictures, but at least listening to what's going on, at least connecting with what's going on, and feeling the uncomfortable emotions that we're feeling, and talking in communities as well about it. That's why I created a sisterhood circle as well myself, because we have to be able to talk about those things as well. We have to be able also, because sometimes obviously we don't have the right people around us. You might not have people who share the same beliefs, so we have to come in communities and talk about it and heal together. But I literally had to face those things. I literally had to cry and share and just feel for everyone in the world that is suffering, because it is like we cannot deny it. If I had denied it, I would be in a colonial mindset and I would just keep feeding the system, and that is not something that's going to help change. We have to decolonize ourselves inside of ourselves, and everything is connected again. Like when it comes to our women's condition, what we're going through as women, everything is connected. So, so yeah, that's it for this episode. Again, if you want to know more about what's going on in the world, I literally have created an account called CTT Humanity. You follow that. You just follow this. If you don't want to have only this on your feed, well, just follow mine. I don't share horrible pics or horrible videos. I collaborate with people from all over the world who are sharing their GoFundMe's. I also have a spreadsheet where you can support people around the world and donate to their campaign so that they can evacuate safely again, donate to projects as well that are helping people who are stuck because they just don't have the fund to evacuate the country. So they're trying their best to survive and created some level of life, of routine, of education for their children. Like literally, if we were in their position, we would be in the same shit. We would not be able to manifest a way out of it. We would have to be resilient and find a way to survive. So we have to at least support them. We have to at least look at what's happening. In Sudan, literally, 100 women committed mass suicide because they were going to get raped. They were afraid of, because war rape is not just rape, like it can be like it can get so violent that women will get like will die from it, will end up with infections, will end up with their ovaries twisted. Like it's so barbaric. I have no words to describe it, and I will not describe it more than that. But literally, if women had to committed suicide for that, and a lot of people think, well, oh my God, like it's just because uh like they found excuses for that, but literally how scared you must be as a woman to commit suicide and feeling like the only way out of your situation is suicide of the war, because you know you're going to get raped, you don't know if you're going to come out alive, or if, because women there have been raped over and over again, tied to trees and raped and gang raped. Like if women get to a place where they commit suicide like massively, how horrible their life must be, like their circumstance must be, if it's the only way out. And again, when you're in war, you're in survival mode, there's no way you can relax. And the only way to manifest our way out is to relax, is to be able to have some level of relaxation and let it go. When you are in flight or fight mode, like when you're in survival mode, there's no way you can manifest anything. So the only thing you can do is survive until, and then afterwards, you have also the mental health side that you have to survive, because maybe you'll find also on my page, CTT Humanity, there are people Palestinian who've been able to evacuate, but the scars, the mental scars, people have lost their children. So adults evacuate without their children who got killed. Can you imagine the pain? And like also the nervous system, the state of the nervous system. How can you live again normally? How can you function normally? A lot of people who are going to come out of those wars, even those who survive, are they going to survive mentally, or are they going to end up killing themselves? Because war, you have to survive war physically, but then you have to survive war mentally with the scars that it's put on you. If you have enough money, and then the system again, we enter back in a system where you have to work, you have to be exhausted. Do you have time for your mental health? How much does it cost to heal, right? How much does it cost to pay a therapist? Are there projects to support people who survive war to actually heal and to be like have psychological support? There's none usually. So imagine, like, war creates physical, obviously kills people, but then it also kills the survivors mentally, emotionally. So like that's why I'm saying, if you haven't supported, got into what's happening in the world, and I'm also feeling for obviously people, not the celebrity, but like people who've lost literally their homes and who are not privileged in the United States, and who have lost family members. I feel for them as well. Um, and people who are also homeless and struggling mentally. Like, it should be unanimous. We should support each other. We should get out of our little comfort zone and actually take steps to help people, to support people, and to face the discomfort that goes with it, basically. We have to face the discomfort that goes with it. It's really important. It's the only way we can actually heal and dive deeper into becoming like independent from this society and from this colonialist mindset, and heal that colonialist mindset and have also the space. What I wanted to add also is, once you start healing that colonialist mindset, you start also making space for the reconnection with ancestry, with your ancestors, with your wisdom, your inner resources, and past wisdom about Mother Nature, and get your rituals and the ancestral knowledge back, and bring back to life like the wisdom of your ancestors, supporting indigenous communities all over the world as well, because they need our support as well. They've been suppressed since the beginning of the system. Can you imagine? Like, it's been centuries. Like, they've been traumatized, abused. In the United States, you will still find there's still murders going on. They are still few for their lives. There's still people, like, they're still being suppressed and unalived in silence. So it's really important also that we support Native Americans, but also all indigenous, communities all over the world. Is really important, because those are the ones who have the wisdom, who can teach the wisdom, who have this, remain in connection with Mother Earth. So all of that is interconnected, as you can see, and it's the only way for us to actually find our way back to living in harmony with nature, because that is the only way that we can live. That is the only way that a human being is meant to live. So, okay, so that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching until the end. If you're interested in diving deeper into um, like trauma healing, I have a free webinar called How to Heal Trauma. And also make sure to follow my second page, CTT Humanity, so that you can get updates as well. I put a lot of things in the stories as well. And also you have the spreadsheet where you can find so many resources, activists as well, people you can follow, like, that will bring you true information about what's going on, and that are independent from mass media. There's so many. I keep updating the spreadsheet as well, so you'll find more activists. As every time I found someone new, I put it on the spreadsheet so that people can just go and follow them. There's literally a guy in Palestine who's like documenting and uh doing a documentary on what's going on in other spaces in Palestine, where there's the settlers, and how the military is trying to like kill and erase Palestinian who've been there for generations, and take their lands. You have so many people you can follow. There's also activists for Sudan, Congo, who are over there as well, who advocate for them. So that's also important. I share about Afghan women as well, because recently Afghan women, I don't know if you've heard, probably you've heard, are at a level of suppression that has never been reached in history. I think they cannot sing anymore, they cannot talk, they've been asked to be silent, so they've been deprived of every single one of their human rights to exist as a human being. And so a lot of women in Afghanistan are currently, singing, risking their lives, singing to protest and to they're so brave, like it's crazy. Like, they're literally singing and risking their lives by singing, but filming themselves singing to, to protest, because that's all they can do, basically. And they literally don't give a fuck if they get killed anyhow, because like at one point you get to a point where, like, what else you could really do, right? Because no one can go and help them. And again, we can help them. I will update the spreadsheet. So if I found a way to help them as well, there will be some links. But we have to like concentrate on that as well. It's really important. So make sure to check that out. And in the meantime, I'm sending you much love, goddess, and keep rising and keep shining. Sending you much love.